Hiya, this is Kitten Features, and you're listening to ShowX Live with Ken in the student accommodation all the way in Scotland. Wait, that was years ago. You're listening to ShowX Live with your favorite Scotsman Ken, currently residing in the US of A, and Wayne, mostly from Colorado.
Hey, wait a second. I'm on the show too, and I don't get any billing at all? Well, I know how to solve this. Soldater, Fremad, March! You're listening to Show X with our favorite Scotsman Ken, our child of the corn Wayne, currently living in Colorado, and Todd, who now has an army of angry Norwegians at his back. Enjoy the show!
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. You're listening live at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT on this Sunday, the 2nd of November, 2020. And welcome to the show. To kick things off, we have to start with a happy and very important celebration of one of our longest supporters, listeners, viewers, and all to the show, as he has celebrated another level up moment in his life. And so for you, Mr. Hando, a very happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow. That was like, that was so
sexual.
controlled. I mean,
Yeah.
you put me to shame, sir.
Close Maryland.
I say, I have been doing a terrible mockery of it since you have not been on the show. That was wonderful. So happy birthday, Mr. Hando. Hopefully you had a wonderful one in celebration. All right. So for people who are tuning in today, we are going to be talking about the MMO genre, about gaming over the past, what has it been, 16 years or more. MMOs have been in existence, and I say 16 years to talk specifically to the, I guess, target that everyone has been shooting for some time of WoW. And basically everything we've been following ever since World of Warcraft kind of broke everybody's mind about what an MMO, a massive multiplayer game, could be, and is essentially perhaps still doing it today. And so we're going to look at what happened to all these proposed WoW killers that were supposed to come out through the year, and where are MMOs today? Where might they be going? All right, so to kick things off, Ken, do you want to start us off kind of getting into what we know about MMOs?
Yeah, so I first just mentioned that, the most important news of the day in terms of MMOs is that World of Warcraft Shadowlands is released tomorrow. So that's pretty big news. I mean, the WoW expansion has come, consistently, but not very frequently, right? I mean, they're every 2 to 4 years usually. This next one, it's a bit of a mess lore-wise, I gotta say, but I'm still kind of excited to be exploring some new stuff, bringing back a lot of old characters, because the whole theme of this expansion is going to be entering the death world. So you can pretty much go and meet, all the old characters of Warcraft past. And we're finally going to start to understand some of this death magic that has existed since Wrath of the Lich King, but it's never really been explained. So it's going to be kind of interesting. I just hope they don't screw the lore too much. But that's kind of what was the inspiration for today's show, is that we've got this new expansion coming out, and it got me thinking, what happened to all those MMO killers, MMOs that were going to be WoW killers over the years, like Rift. I remember that was going to be a big one, and everybody was talking about how it was going to. I've not even heard that name be said in years. It's just disappeared. And there's been so many MMOs over the years. I think now they've gotten to the stage where they're quite happy to just exist. Like, I don't think they're trying to be WoW killers anymore. I think most people who make an MMO now would consider quite comfortably with 80,000 to 250,000 global players, and make a happy income on that. I think most games companies are pretty chill and relaxed with those figures. Whereas back in the day, MMOs that were coming out felt that they had to beat WoW, so they had to be like 5, 10, 20 million players. And that didn't ever happen. None of them did, as far as I'm aware. Even the big names like Star Wars, right? When SWTOR came out. So that's the sort of inspiration for this discussion. And what I wanted to touch on first today was what the three of us over the years, what MMOs have we played? That's going to be something we should definitely talk about. And two, equally important, which MMOs did you really look forward to, and then what happened to them? Because I think those are really they'll be most interesting, right? Because I think we all had some MMOs that were like, "Ooh, that looks cool," and then and then something happens, or more than the point, nothing happens. So
okay,
let's go down that route.
Okay, do you want to go first, Dwayne? Because I suspect your story is significantly shorter than mine's going to be.
Likely, yeah. No, part of it's also kind of that thought or discussion of like what makes an MMO an MMO, because that's an interesting kind of piece of where the conversation goes today. But speaking specifically, like what I consider the MMOs I've played and what I've seen. So my first actual MMO was WoW. I started, what was it? It came out 2006, I think, officially. Or no, 2004. Sorry. It came out 2004. I started playing spring 2005. Because I was roped in by Serpensor, and I think he was the main one who kept poking and bugging me and saying, everybody, you need to play this, and was probably one of the major, as well as the cancer started spreading through the, Game Fest crew of everybody who suddenly was all playing WoW. And so my experience of it was I played it for about a year and a half. Did not stick around, was teased, but didn't make it into Burning Crusade initially because I left right before basically it finally launched. I left after it got delayed however many times, and I was sitting at level 59 with my undead rogue, and was kind of like, if I hit 60, I felt like I beat the game. But again, that was because it was like baby's first MMO that I thought, you get max level, that's it, right? Game over, like every other game I've played. And so I kind of pittered off and didn't play after that. And then I came back a few times after a couple expansions. Came back, I think, for a minute during Wrath, and then came back for a minute after Cataclysm, and played it just for a bit each time for maybe a month. And I think in the most recent, it was after what's the last one that came out before Shadowlands is coming? The last expansion.
Battles for Azeroth.
Was it Battles in? I think during that time frame, although I never got the actual expansion because enough other people jumped on, I played for maybe 2 or 3 months-ish again. So I kind of touched WoW at various stages, mostly to kind of see the state of it, see what changed, what I remembered. And then beyond WoW, I played EVE for about 6 months, I want to say, EVE Online, with a group of people. And then what did I do beyond EVE? I did EVE for about 6 months. And then I've kind of touched on a bunch of other little ones. I played Terra for a minute. I played, I at least looked at RuneScape, I think, for a second, classic with you, Ken, or something, and it was like, nope.
Oh, yeah, we screwed around that for like a day, yeah. No, wait, let's go back to that bit where you mentioned EVE. I didn't realize you played EVE.
Yeah.
For 6 months as well.
Yeah, so basically, because of my cousin, Hostile Prey, when he first moved in, he had been playing EVE for years. And so because he was playing it so much and it was right there in house, I could look over the shoulder and watch. I was kind of like, okay, I'll check that out. And I jumped in and like touched it for a moment, right? At least played it. I guess I could say I played a minute of Destiny 2. I checked out Elder Scrolls Online when it was in beta because I loved all the Bethesda stuff and was hoping it would be similar. People, I guess it's interesting because I'm pulling some of these lists off of, I'm looking at MMO populations. So MMO-population.com is the site I'll be referencing during this. I play still to a degree Star Citizen, and that can be argued whether it counts.
I think it does. Yeah, it's kind of like EVE in that sense.
Guild Wars 2, I gave a couple tries because it's when you buy once and you can play. When that was the model from subscription, Guild Wars 2 was like one of my first ones I got was buy once play. I did play. What was it? Star Wars Old Republic? Was that the only one that came out? That was a Star Wars? Yeah, SWTOR. So I played SWTOR for about probably 6 months. Man, I didn't realize I touched this many MMOs. Like I touched,
Yeah.
like I touched Star
Funny how
Trek
that happens.
Online, but I didn't stick around long. What else did I touch? I have, and I play a little more of what's the Black Desert. I have, and I've played like here and there a bit, but not much. I played, like I said, Terra for a minute. So there's a bunch I like touched. And Lord of the Rings Online, I actually gave like a couple months. And then was that about it? DDO was the other one that I probably spent more time than others in and such. But that would, I think I want to call that my overall list. Yeah.
That's quite it's quite extensive, and that branches through various subgenres of MMOs as well, focusing mostly on fantasy and sci-fi, I think.
Yeah, I mean there are others I touched because like I touched what was there was a superhero one that was it DC did?
Yeah, DC Universe.
Yeah, DCU I touched.
DC Online.
Yeah, whichever one of those. So like I've touched a bunch. I touched Dust 514 on the PlayStation. If you remember that one attached to Eve. Kind of thing. So anyhow,
yeah. That was the ground one, right?
Yep, that was the ground one. Age of Conan I touched. That's the problem. Like I checked out a lot of betas and like first months of that. But it almost unstuck me. Anyhow, that's mine.
Well, so we'll start with Serpentor, because much of this is his fault. And by this, I mean not only World of Warcraft, but the show. Because, like you, Wayne, he ran in one day and said, "Oh my God, you got to play World of Warcraft."
Yep.
And then one day in May of 2005, he ran in and went, "Oh my God, there's this thing called podcasting. And there's a bunch of podcasts about World of Warcraft. And one of the guys on it sounds just like you." And I think he said, just like you and Hordak. And so I was like, all right, that's interesting. I checked it out the next week, and it was the 23rd of May 2005 episode of Blue Please.
Nice.
I remember listening to that first episode. I actually listened to it last year again, and it's so amateur now. Like his first episode compared to his last.
Oh yeah,
ones,
yeah.
Oh my God, the talent difference. He grew so much over the years.
Sure. He's phenomenal at plying his craft.
Oh yeah,
for sure. Like he got really, really good.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought he was good to start with. Anyway, so I started listening to Blue Please, and it got to be summer of 2005, and I went, well, wait a minute, I can do that. And then it wasn't until the summer of 2006 that I ended up getting a bonus from work. And I had decided if I had gotten what I was hoping I was going to get, that I was going to go down to Guitar Center and pick up all the audio stuff to be able to do the pod. Wayne's got most of that equipment now.
Like literally sitting right here, the mixer board, this mic, the other mics on there, are reminiscent of that first purchase. They are the same hardware.
Yep. So we started the first episode of Octale and Hordak versus the World in August of 2006. August the 6th of 2006. And 6 weeks later, we were on WoW Radio there until it closed its doors at the end of January 2010. So, game-wise, the first group we were in was a foursome of Hordak, myself, John Paul or Gorignac, and Serpentor, and we ran every instance in the game up until the level 60s, because you really couldn't four-man those. But otherwise, we four-manned everything else.
That's pretty impressive. You must have got a nice extra kick of XP actually doing that.
Yeah. Well, so we were over-leveled for some chunk of it, but still. A melee shaman, a warrior, a priest, and a demon warlock. So like massively suboptimal. Like just massively suboptimal. But we made our way through. one of my favorite stories is we were in Scarlet Monastery Cathedral, and Serpensor had just figured out how to command his demons to go attack things.
Okay.
And he said, oh my god, you guys, I'm gonna like have my demon go get the guys around the corner and bring them back to us so we don't have to like try and pull them through the door.
Terrible idea. Okay.
Fantastic. Our positioning was not great. Let's just say that. And Serpensor sent his demon across the front of the cathedral, aggroing the boss. And when you aggroed the boss, you aggroed everything else in the cathedral, all the mobs that you hadn't cleared. So all of a sudden you hear the activation noise, and then you heard it in like a strobe effect, like 10 more times. It's like, well, we're gonna die. So also for Serpensor, I think this was Dire Maul East.
Oh god, I remember back in those days. Yeah.
Serpensor, it's an elemental. Just had to say that. Then we created a second set of characters and we themed them. So this time, the second time, we did characters that were named after 80s cartoon bad guys, which is where Hordak comes from. So we had Hordak and Skeletor and Gargamel and Monstar. I played a cow druid called Monstar with 2 R's. So bad guys from He-Man and She-Ra and Silverhawks and the Smurfs. And we did a second 4-man, and a Hordak actually took that character and apped a raiding guild and was in a raiding guild for several years, all the way through TBC and maybe into Wrath of the Burger King. Did some guild stuff, did some raid stuff. TBC was my favorite time in World of Warcraft. The Burning Crusade to me was as close to perfect as it could possibly get. It did just, the level design, the encounter design, the technical aspects of what you needed to do in order to be successful in those 5-mans. And the raids too, but the 5-mans are to me what really shined in that whole expansion. Plus the story, plus the variety of landscape, plus all the other stuff. It was
Did
really.
Did you ever play? Which one was it? It wasn't Legion. It was the one before Legion. The Warlords of Draenor. Did you ever play that expansion?
No.
Todd?
No.
Okay, so that one you revisit Outland, but it's like it hasn't been corrupted. So I thought you might enjoy that because it's just so different. It's the same place but revitalized in a different way.
Sure. That would be interesting. Wrath of the Burger King killed my guild. And mostly because the Naxxramas reboot was criminally easy.
Well, it's an entry level raid is what the purpose was.
Well,
but it was kind of offensive to those who did it before. Yeah.
And that's fine. But again, there's a level design philosophy that needs to be made that says not everybody's going to raid. Not everybody wants to raid. And not everybody's good enough to raid. So fine, provide the large group content for the people who want to do it. But the rewards for that content can't be more than about 1 standard deviation above in performance above what the non-raid gear is. Otherwise,
that's pretty much what happens now.
Incentivizing raiding too much, which was World of Warcraft's big problem. Even into the Burning Crusade, and the way they tried to solve it was to turn everybody into a raider.
Yeah.
And the big lesson learned there is that not everybody is. Not everybody's got the patience for it. Not everybody's got the skill for it. Not everybody's got the uh, interpersonal skills for it.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
I think there's a difference between pre-made raids and LFRs, right? Looking for raids where you just jump in and if everybody nukes in the same direction, it's fine. But if you actually do a pre-made, you can turn on heroic mode, and then it's a real challenge. And then you need people to actually think and be able to act. And there's usually certain requirements like there are actually achievements in the game called Ready for Raiding. And it's numbered now, so it's almost like per expansion. So I think it's on something like Ready for Raiding 7 now. So a lot of people who are actually organizing big raids will say you're not getting in unless you have the achievement, which says that you've done all the mythic dungeons, which are also quite hard. They're 5-mans that require you to, actually use crowd control and stuff again. So they have tried to factor that in these days, and I know that they definitely messed up a lot over the years.
yeah, and it's not that I necessarily blame Blizzard all that much for the design decisions that were made in the first 5 years of World of Warcraft's existence. I was really mad at the beginning of 2009, and it showed in the quality of the content. But I really felt like this thing that I felt a very close connection to. I mean, let's be real about this for a second. The settings were vibrant and the stories were interesting and some of the characters were pretty dope. And it is this huge story of you sort of meandering and progressing through this world. And for the most part, it worked. And there were lots of different paths you could take. So like that first time, if you've never leveled Horde on Duratar, like you can do that, and it's not like it's a similar but different experience, right? Like everybody should have to experience leveling in the Crossroads at least once.
Oh man, I hated that area.
I loved that area. It was
Baron's chat was its own specialty. It was
sure
particularly funny, but man,
yeah, you ignore Baron's chat. You turn on that week's episode of Blue Please and Vendor Trash, and you do a set of like 4 quests at the same time. Turn them all in, gain a level, get the next set of quests, go do those, and it's like 4 or 5 at a time. You turn all those in, you gain another level. Like the leveling is just so efficient from a design standpoint, like a quest design standpoint, or a sort of an overworld design standpoint. I thought the Barrens was quite good, and the Crossroads too. If anything, it's a little big. Like that, the area of the Barrens is a little big. But outside of that, I mean, you get there at like level 10 or 11, and you stay there until you're early to mid 20s. Like, it's fantastic. Silverpine. Let me try that again. Silverpine Forest is great. There is not a bad locale in TBC, I don't think. I thought they were all great.
I agree with that. I really loved the zones. They were beautiful.
Yeah, they were diverse biomes. Every area was sort of its own self-contained story, but it was all interconnected in some way. Like it was really fantastic.
They did a very, very good job of making us hate the bosses as well for the first time. Like you actually started to really dislike. You actually wanted to go and kill the bosses. And in Classic, you were like, "Who's this guy we're killing? Who's Ragnaros?" Right?
Yeah. Yep. Too soon, Executus. And then also when interest in World of Warcraft waned, we tried the beta for an MMO called Dark and Light. And the gimmick behind Dark and Light was that they were going to map an entire globe.
Oh, wow.
So they were going to have a globe that had this massive surface area, right? That you were going to travel, that you were going to have to travel between places to. And the first time you went to these places, you were going to have to walk the road.
Okay.
Wow. It's not E.T. the Extraterrestrial. It's not the Atari 2600 port of Pac-Man. But it's close. It was one of the worst video games I had ever played.
Ooh.
In as much as you would be in a starting area doing the leveling up process, and the swing in level between mobs could be as high as 20. Like you would find a mob that was 5 levels below you, and then the next mob you found was 15 levels above you. And the spawn points would be like right next to each other.
Ouch.
Like, I don't mind the odd high level enemy that you have to be aware of that trudges around slowly and that if you're not paying attention can get you.
But like
I
the
think that's
wandering
really
ones,
fun.
like the wandering ones in WoW.
Yeah, like the Fell Reavers, exactly.
Oh yeah. Fell
They're
Reaver was
memorable,
great.
right?
Yeah.
But if it's every other mob, that's just bad design.
Mm-hmm. So I never saw the light of day with that one in actual production. I guess Hellgate London counts, although I never really played that as an MMO. I only really played that by myself.
That's all right. I played WoW as
in groups of 2 a couple of times.
I was gonna say that's okay. I played WoW with just Earthweaver and I most of the way.
I will say this. I did get my money's worth out of Hellgate London. So, because I bought the Founders Pack at launch, and it was 15 months of subscription. Oh no, it was $150 for a lifetime subscription, and the lifetime of the game was 15 months. So I got exactly $50 worth of value out of it.
Can you imagine these days if you got a lifetime subscription for WoW back in Classic, how much money you could have saved if you played all that time? Like that would be in the thousands of dollars.
I would probably still have a subscription to World of Warcraft had that been offered.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. After that, I splashed around in Star Trek Online for a while. That was Jekyll and Hyde. The spaceship combat was quite good. Any ground mission, absolute trash. Like they could have cut if they would have just stripped everything that had to do with away teams and stuff on the ground out of the game and done only ship combat, I would still be playing it.
I remember that.
Because the ship combat was that good. It was like the pen and paper Starfleet battles, but an MMO.
That's neat.
And that just, like, right up my alley. Good stuff. Destiny 2 for quite a while. That was going to be my father-in-law and the Mistress of Giggles and I were going to form our own 3-person team. And I, of course, got way out in front of everybody because, like, I get addicted to this stuff. And so I got way out in front of everybody, and we never could come up with a set time to connect together. So I was by myself in the guild Imaginary DPS. Our guild tagline was "My DPS equals DPS times the square root of -1."
That's a pretty nerdy joke. Cool.
Pretty nerdy. I totally agree. Star Wars: The Old Republic with myself, the Mistress of Giggles, Hordak, and Hordak's wife. And we played that for a few months together. in a four-person team. There was only one of us that went light side or tried to go light side. Like the rest of us went dark side. So you could play as a light side Sith if you wanted to. I did not do that. I can tell you. But that one was unique in that it assigned whose dialogue options would show up at random. So you'd get these, you'd be inside a story area and you'd be doing quests and stuff. And for one quest, you'd do the nice thing because it was, Hordak was playing light side. And he would do the nice thing at the end of the storyline quest. And then we'd do another quest and it would be my turn and I would end up like force lightning somebody to death because they had betrayed the Sith. And I wanted to go full dark side, so it was fun. But again, nothing. The thing about so Dark and Light was just bad. We don't have to worry about that. The thing about Star Wars: The Old Republic and Destiny 2 and Star Trek Online is that if you're going to move to one of those games, you have to get most of your group to move to those games. And that was a big problem, at least amongst the Game Fest crew that had just finally gotten to the point in World of Warcraft that we were like a year previous. And we're just like, okay, we're ready to do max level content. And it's like, yeah, we're kind of done with the game now. It's like, I mean, sure, I guess, but eh. So it was hard. It was, I had dreams from the first time I booted up World of Warcraft and started playing a character of having all of us together in such a fashion that we could carve out some amount of time every week. Wednesday night, Thursday night, Monday night, whatever. And that would be dedicated gaming time. And depending on how many people showed up, that's what we'd do. Right? And especially once the raiding environment changed from 20 and 40 mans to 10 and 25 mans, like that was not impossible. But for whatever reason, it just never happened. So, let's see. What else? I suppose World of Warships kind of counts, but it's a competitive.
Yeah, that's an odd one.
It comes up on the MMO populations list.
What's that?
It does come up on the the populations lists as same with like World of Tanks.
All right. Well, it's it's one of those things. They have clans, which are basically guilds, and I'm in a clan now. I wasn't planning on it, but fortunately for me, unfortunately maybe, my win percentage is high enough that if anybody goes looking at statistics, they'll go, "Why isn't this guy tagged?" Yes, and so I do occasionally get random clan invites from random clans. So I finally just said, you know what? I'll join a clan as long as they don't give me a bunch of crap about doing clan battles and stuff. I don't really care. Like, it's just good to be tagged because I won't get the clan invites anymore.
Agreed. Yeah.
So that is worth it, really. So, yeah, I think that's my
nice.
I think that's my MMO story.
Right,
I'm trying to think. I played The Secret World for a long time.
Did you actually put a lot of time into it?
I put a fair bit of time into it. Good, weird, right? Because it's Lovecraftian
Yep.
universe.
I forgot all about that one. How was it?
It was okay. It was another one of those games like, gosh, I forgot about Aeon or Ion, AION.
It's now when they just disappeared off my radar after the release day.
Yeah, because the Mistress of Giggles and I played that for a while, and I got to the point where I could fly, and then it was just like you have to have other people in your party in order to do this stuff, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that unless it's the Mistress of Giggles.
Mhm.
So, like, my progression has stopped? Question mark. So, Aeon was not terribly interesting to me. The Secret World more so, but I did all the single player. I did all the single player stuff, and they started to put some repeatable single player episodic quests in, but you had to either be subscribed or buy them.
Buy quests?
They were so what they were trying to do is they were trying to like trickle out content in episodes, and so
They did the same thing in
one
DDO.
point, when you were subscribed, you just got access to the episodes. For the people that wouldn't or couldn't or didn't want to subscribe or whatever, you could purchase the episodes, I believe, is how that worked.
Okay.
I did some of the episodic content. It was pretty cool. I played a DPS character, of course, because if you're gonna be out in the world, you have to deal. You have to deal damage in order to get stuff done.
I love tanking quests, man. I love just going tank, doing next to no damage, but then just pulling, like, say I need to kill 10 mobs, I'll pull 10 mobs and then do AoE for like a minute and a half until they're all dead. That's my favorite way to quest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I forgot about those. I just looked at my screen over there and saw the Secret World and was like, oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that one.
Now, I've had a few as well, because as you were mentioning, Todd, there were other ones in there. I was like, I did try that one. But how about you, Ken? What was your path to MMO?
So my first ever MMO was before WoW. It was RuneScape. So I played, and it was RuneScape 2, I guess. And I never played the original, never played Classic, and I'm glad, because that really does look like 6 pixels on your screen at one time. And I played the crap out of that when I was like 9 years old, 10 years old. Like I remember, I would get up, I would sneak up out of my bed. Like, what kid does this? I would sneak up out of my bed at like 5 o'clock in the morning before school. Like, I needed to get up at like 8, right? I need to actually wake up at 8. But I'd get up at 5 so I could sneak and play RuneScape for 3 hours and grind. I would chop trees, man. I don't know why. I was obsessed with this idea of like being rich in the game via woodcutting. So RuneScape was kind of a unique MMO in the sense that the professions were like 9% of the game. Like, there's quests and stuff, and that's fine. You can do that, and that's sort of like the eventually thing you do eventually. But a lot of the quests are really hard. Like, they require either an in-depth knowledge or you follow like a I don't know, a novel worth of guide. Like, it was pretty tough to actually do the quests in RuneScape. So, but and you needed a lot of like materials. So often being rich made it much easier. So what I wanted to do was just become super rich. And also, like, I don't know if you guys ever heard the rumors about Zezima, right? Do you remember this? Like,
No,
this
one
was,
I don't
think. So Zezima, I think, was kind of like a world-known guy, and he was a very mysterious figure because I don't know if it was ever found out who he actually was. But basically, for about 5-6 years, Zezima was the #1 player. Like, you can look up the stats for all players and see who's the best, right? Because in the way the RuneScape worked is you start at level 1 for everything, for all like 25 skills that you could level up, including combat skills and professional skills, magic skills, summoning, construction, loads of stuff, right? And Zezima was #1 for everything. He was like overall amount of XP.
Wow.
He was #1 because once you reach level 99, you can still gain XP. You didn't ever level up again, but you still counted. He was #1 in the world by a huge chunk. And people were always like, "Who is this guy?" And I remember hearing rumors, like in chat, people always used to talk about him. I remember people would say things like, "Oh, he must be like a homeless guy who like lives in a McDonald's and like just uses their Wi-Fi." And I believed it. I was like, that must be who he is. That's Zezma. And I remember adding him as a friend and trying to whisper and be like, "Hi," and obviously like he didn't ever respond. But like everybody was doing it. This guy was like, he was like a Jesus figure for RuneScape, and that was a really unique thing with that game because in World of Warcraft you might hear about the people who get number ones, world firsts for certain things, but they kind of fall into the background after the next raid comes out. It's not a big deal. RuneScape had Zezima as this number one figure for years, and even now, I still follow like RuneScape memes because I think they're funny to see occasionally. I still see people like making memes about Zezima, right? And, like, hey dude, don't fight me. I'll come back on my main Zezima. Like that. So yeah, I used to play the crap out of that. I would woodcut, and I got myself to level 96 before I gave up. Because the way it kind of worked is, so getting to level 2 was the equivalent of level 1 doubled. Getting to level 3 was the equivalent of level 1 all level 2 doubled. So you have to redo everything you've already done twice over to get to the next level. So when I get into, let me just rephrase that. I was level 96. Let me just reiterate that point, right? That means I got really far. Like that was hardcore, Like I must have spent like hundreds of hours of my childhood just cutting down trees in a circle over and over and over again. And that must have given me some life skills, by the way. That must have helped me out in some ways.
Focus.
Because I think I learned a lot about willpower there. And I remember I was quite rich. Like I would go into the auction house and I would sell, or what was it called? Actually, this is before they introduced the Grand Market. The Grand Exchange is what it's called. So you used to have to do it in chat, and chat wasn't like a global thing. It was only people who were like on your screen at the time. So people would gather in like town squares, and there'd be everybody talking at once. So the screen would be flooded with text. And I remember I had like copy paste scripts, like selling maple logs, selling magic logs, selling log, all this stuff. And I remember I made so much money, man. I was rich as hell. And yeah, that was my first MMO. Really enjoyed it, and I go back occasionally just to look around and be like, "Oh man, this is ridiculous." It really is such a grind, even to this day. However, it's now available on mobile, so you can actually play ORSR, old school RuneScape, OSRS even, on Android and iOS, which is pretty neat. But you do need to pay a subscription, which is something like £6, $8 a month or whatever. But it's pretty neat because it is, it's such a grind that it really would be kind of good for bus travel, sitting on a train, or sitting on the toilet. That's the kind of thing it really would skip. In my opinion, it would shine. You'd feel like you're progressing and doing something productive when you're stuck in traffic. Anyway, so yeah, I played that a little bit. This was at the time when I was also listening to Octon Hordak and TV and so on, Blue Please, and that's where I first heard about Hellgate London as well. So I got myself a copy of Hellgate London. I also played. I remember I had an engineer. I don't know if that's actually the name of the class, but I thought of him as an engineer anyway. And I remember that was the thing I was so impressed with Hellgate London for, was just the incredible variety of mechanics available and the whole number of classes. And do you remember that beautiful CGI trailer that they had?
Yes.
It was beautiful, man. I was so into that. I was so into it. And I started playing, and I remember it was like launch day or like the day after or something. And or at least it was for me anyway. I don't actually know who actually it was. But nobody was playing. I remember I was on like the most popular server, and I never saw another soul. And I was like, man. I was so disappointed. And then like the next week or something, or I don't know the exact time frame, but a while afterwards it closed down, and I was like, man, could not believe it. I was so excited for that game. I thought it had so much potential. It's very interesting. The story was so cool.
Yeah, the story was cool. I actually bought the first set of books that came out.
Oh, really?
So do you remember the Doom books from way back in the day? The first one was they followed the episodes of the video game. The first one was called Knee Deep in the Dead. The second one was called Hell on Earth. And the third one, I don't remember, but somebody in the chat can probably find it. Well, they did the same thing with Hellgate London.
Oh.
And so I bought this set of books about a knight, the
Templars.
Templar, yeah, about a Templar knight who figured out that he had to find a specific Kabbalist, magic user, and the bad guy was a guy that the knight rescued, kind of, but then got in contact with the demons somehow and started to transform into a demon. This is really vague because I read them a long time ago. But anyway, yeah, those were fun. I loved the world of Hellgate London, and it had one of the best mechanics of action RPGs.
Go on.
Ken, do you remember the little icons? I think they were in the low left of the screen. There were these 3 little icons, and you'd run around and you'd kill dudes, and one of them would fill in, and eventually you would get all 3 of the icons to fill in, and as soon as the icons all filled in, a bunch of loot would erupt out of the ground.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember. I don't think I remember the icons, but I remember the loot going everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So essentially the symbols were either a damage type, a monster type, or a weapon type. And you had to get a certain number of kills with whatever it was. You had to kill a certain number of a specific type of demon, or you had to kill a certain number of mobs with fire damage, or you had to kill a certain number of mobs with like melee weapons or whatever. And every time you filled in the icons, loot would blow up out of the ground. I loved that mechanic. Absolutely, positively loved that mechanic. We will never see it in an action RPG or an MMO again. Never say never, but we won't, because everybody's got a bad taste in their mouth because of Hellgate London.
Well, I know there's a lot of games that are really, one of their main mechanics is kind of this loot pinata, concept, which is like Diablo and Borderlands, right? And I think if MMOs did kind of cash in on that a bit more, especially with certain bosses, that'd be really fun and be a very rewarding way of, making the gameplay experience rewarding for players. Doing challenging stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I played that a bunch and really enjoyed it. But like I said, it kind of died off. I remember, I think they announced at the very beginning that they had plans to have an expansion originally, and it was going to be Hellgate Paris or Hellgate Tokyo or something.
Something like that.
Yeah.
London was
because they were going to do
city that the demons invaded from.
Yeah, they were going to do all the major cities.
Like, yeah, I remember thinking this is going to be so cool. Like, can you imagine exploring the streets of China and then following through a portal and then being in Paris? And I thought that was just so neat, the entire different atmospheres and zones, not just the dreary London atmosphere. And yeah, it died off, and that was a shame. I think there was a community project a couple of years ago, which brought back Hellgate into a single-player form or something.
I thought they actually released on Steam, didn't they? Where they came back and they took it so that you could play it still?
Yeah, I think it's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks pretty bad these days, though, I have to say. I seem to remember before.
Graphics have not aged well.
No. Well, it is now 13 years old, so yeah. Yeah, it's available on Steam.
Yeah, it is also in the Steam store for $10.
Yep.
Very cool. So that was a shame, but whatever. I also played WoW from listening to all the Warcraft radio shows back in the day. My first character was a human mage because I am such a simple guy. And I remember being like infatuated with every level 60 who ran past me. Or, anybody who had an epic mount, I was like, oh my God. And if somebody had like a purple item, like an epic item, I was like, oh, I will lick your boots. Tell me how you did that. That's cool. I remember like, this is when I was like, I don't know, 11, 10. I remember telling my parents about everything I did in Warcraft that day. Like,
oh no.
They were like, hey, that's exciting. What is he talking about? So yeah. Anyway, I played a bunch of WoW. I've been on and off since then. I'm actually have it now again. I'm back into another phase of enjoying it. I've played EVE Online. Every time I talk about EVE, I keep thinking, yeah, I played like 10 hours. I think it's actually like 300 or something. Because EVE's crazy that way.
Well, Eve, you can play in the background, right? When you're mining, when you're transporting, there's a lot of things you can do where I know tons of people I would see during Game Fest. Mike was like this, where he'd have Eve going on one screen and be playing like whatever game we were all playing on the other. So there was a lot of activities, at least in old school Eve, that you could kind of do as secondary.
I agree in concept, but the problem was my understanding of the game was so poor that I usually had to give it all my focus to understand what the hell was going on. And so for me, I think all those hours I actually put in. I didn't really get to the stage of it being a passive game. But I really enjoyed the concept of Eve, and I think if it was a bit more friendly to people who were trying, I think I eventually just got kind of bored of the fact that, I'd put in hundreds of hours and I was still like, I don't know what's going on really. Am I doing the right thing? Is this what I should be doing?
Dude.
I remember when I went off the sort of tutorial track somehow. I destroyed my ship or something, and there was nothing at the time in the game. There was nothing to tell you what to do. And I remember like flumbering and flustering for tens of hours, and eventually just giving up because I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing anymore, and I didn't really want to start again. So I was like, screw this. So yeah, I really like the idea of Eve, but yeah, I eventually gave up. God, what else did I play? I played a bunch of MMOs around the place. Yeah, I tried SWTOR for a while. I enjoyed it, but like I said in the chat earlier, I felt like, oh hey, Biomed, long time no see.
Right.
I remember that I played SWTOR for a while, but like I said in the chat, I feel like it felt like a console game after coming from World of Warcraft and RuneScape, where there was so much stuff you could do. There's so many professions, so many buttons, different specializations and stuff. And then you go to SWTOR and you have like 3 buttons. I was like, this sucks. I don't want to play a button basher. I don't believe in MMOs that are button bashers. I'm not into that. And the same went for DC Universe Online, or whatever it's actually called. I enjoyed all the customization. I love the fact that you could choose like what kind of movement your superhero would make. Like, do you use like mechanical stuff, or do you fly? Are you super fast? Do you jump really high? And I loved all that. I thought that was so cool. Like, are you a magic user? Are you more of like a punchy guy? Lasers? So cool. I remember I made Lara Croft. Like, it actually looked just like her. And she moved by using like a mechanical hawk thing.
Which era of Lara Croft can I ask?
Consider
like a realistically rendered Lara Croft, or was this Lara Croft?
It was probably PS2, so less pointy, slightly more like rounded.
A few more polygons in there.
A few more.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed the game. I thought it was cool and stuff. I enjoyed the world, and I got into dungeons a little bit, and I thought it was kind of cool that you could have tanks and DPS and healers and support. I liked having that 4th level of class that was kind of available through the customization. But again, it never really caught on to me. It was the lack of actual abilities that you do, and customizability with your actual, like, this is the way that you had to play this class. If you don't play that way, you suck, and you will fail, and you will never do anything successful in the game. I don't want to play that game. I'm not into it. I like games that have a choice of how I want to play. And yeah, I think there's a couple other ones that are pretty minor that I don't think I need to mention. But yeah, I throughout my gaming life, MMOs have been a staple though. Like,
okay.
I usually have like a year of MMO and then a year of every other game type, pretty much. That's usually how I go.
Okay. So it sounds like we've all kind of had our dabbles in time in the MMO space, some more than others and such. And so I think we'll take a break here, come back, read an email from Ionis. That is a properly MMO-sized email coming in. And then we will come back and discuss kind of the state of things and how all of us, coming from the games we played to what we maybe aren't playing going forward, and what we are looking forward to, or what's happening going forward with MMOs. So with that, we're going to, we'll take a quicker one here, about 3.5 minutes, as we listen to a song called Destiny Hopes Rising from OC Remix. And we'll be back right after this.
For the future, some wait for the call to say that the days ahead will be the then our destiny will be the best of all. Hope shines brightest in the dark where nothing's ever seen. Lighting undiscovered places no one's ever been. We'll be together, sharing the load, watching in wonder as our lives unfold. And we will build bridges up to the sky, heavenly light surrounding you and I. For the future, for the future, for the future, for the future, for the
You're listening to ShowX on VtWProductions.com.
Everybody, and welcome back to the show. Hopefully that gave enough people, Ionis and such, time to, have the bio break needed as we continue the conversation. So, wanted to get in with, there's my email. And so Ionis writes us, it says, MMO of people being phalluses to one another. All right. Hey guys, so the topic is MMO games, huh? I think I played enough of them to write you guys at least a few sentences. You can bet your ass I could probably go on and on about World of Warcraft, but I don't want to. Not yet. I'm sure WoW is something broadly discussed on the show anyway. Multiplayer games are one of the things that made internet so special for me. I'm not just talking to the people from faraway places, which is the tail end of the 1900s, wasn't anything special anymore. It was about engaging in activity with those faraway people. Suddenly, you're no longer limited to hanging out with people from your own local community. You have a tank from Birmingham, healer from New York, mage from Spennymoor, and a rogue from Istanbul, all playing the same game at the same time. People who had otherwise never had a chance to meet are now sharing the experience, alongside thousands of other people from all over the world. In the tail end of the 2010s, I guess that doesn't sound like anything special anymore either, but it rocked my socks off in the early 2000s. I played a bunch of MMOs since then, better or worse, ones with or without massive following or stuff that is practically unknown. Like Foxhole, the best military game experience I've ever had. It was like PlanetSide on crack. After experiencing the death of massive multiplayer warfare, I could never go back to playing CODs or Modern Warfares.
What was the name of the game again? Sorry, I didn't hear the name.
Foxhole.
Foxhole?
Yeah, I've never heard of that one.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, now I'm curious. A game that, above all, promotes cooperation, relies on people doing crucial non-combat roles just as much as the guys with guns, where well-functioning, quote, home front makes or breaks the army. It was also the game where I ran into extraordinary amount of current and former military personnel. It was some of the most gratifying MMO experiences I've ever had thanks to playing with people who got it, who understood the true meaning of Christmas, so to speak. And here's where MMO's worst aspect is. People who don't get it. There are very few, if any, policing tools to deal with people who don't get it in MMOs. And sometimes it's in a truly lemming-like way, developers themselves create conditions that eventually lead to the community being overran by people who don't get it. This is what happened to WoW, of course. However, the situation is a little different. Wrath of the Lich King was almost an absolute freefall to the bottom of the Arthas pit. But the blueprint for Cataclysm showed hope. It showed that somewhere in Blizzard there were still people who understood that the best experiences MMOs can give you is within a guild. Do you remember this dreadful guild leveling system? I say dreaded. Dreaded because even guild masters would be able to spec their guilds however they liked. We can't have that. It would cause drama. Yeah, for a guild without a spine it would. I remember when after BlizzCon 2009, we sat down to have a talk about the new guild features. And it was put plainly, we're speccing our guilds for raiding. If there's going to be a crafting tree worth having, we'll form it or form an alt guild. Done. Case closed. If you want to do PvP, find a different guild. We'll be sorry to lose you, but we get it. No hard feelings, but needs of the many and so on. Of course, the system was then simplified to guild perks, which were successfully removed in following expansions, because guilds are evil. Any social structure that imposes on your $15 a month given right to be a worthless sack of phalluses in tyranny, and you will not stand for it. And Blizzard agrees. Modern World of Warcraft could be compared to a wasteland full of raiders, mutants, ghouls, and giant fire ants. It is the land where achievements, raider.io score, and item level dictates your position in the pecking order. It is a lawless, harsh landscape where best you can expect from your peers is being ignored when you say hi at the beginning of the dungeon. I salute any vault dwellers who would willingly enter this land of anonymous misery and social contempt. In this wasteland, you can run into high walls protecting closed communities where life goes on as it once did. There are soldiers in power armors protecting those enclaves of humanity. Their inhabitants learn to protect themselves from the outsiders. As years go by, the wastelands get worse. The walls get higher, and the game itself starts to be seen as a toxic and unfriendly to newbies and returning players alike. Well, that was a little poetically hyperbolic, but the core idea is your MMO is only as good as your player base. And if you let your player base degenerate, the quality of the game will follow, because people who don't know any better will demand changes that will benefit them while harming the very fabric of the game itself. Gee, I guess I could have just wrote that one paragraph instead of the whole thing, huh? Well, too late now. Take care, guys. Ionis.
Thank you, Ionis. We always really enjoy your emails.
Very much so.
And remember, if you want to send an email too, you can, VtWShowX@gmail.com. Be sure to email and tell us your thoughts. We post out our theme of the show days before, usually on our Instagram and Twitter and such. So that's how you can find out if you want to have a couple days to write an email, that's how you best do it.
Yes. So speaking of those walls around community, the wall of text that Ionis gives us, thank you. Good analysis of your look at WoW and what things have happened. So, there's an interesting piece there, and I think we need to discuss one of the core things we talked about at the beginning, or kind of in the titling of the show, which was what happened to all the WoW killers and things like that, right? Because I think all of us can agree that WoW is a pillar in the MMO type genre of gaming. Just looking at the top MMOs in 2020 on the chart from MMOpopulation.com, this is as of this year, World of Warcraft is still number one on their listing.
Yep.
And the way they rank it is this is ranked by active players. Now, I do like the chart that MMO Populations has for this, and sharing it here in the chat for anyone who wants to follow along or look for their own, because they both show what their top for active players is, also the overall reported total player base, and they give it an activity score, which I thought was kind of interesting, which is basically a 1 out of 10 of kind of like percentage of your player base that's actually playing the game. And so while WoW has the most active players, it has a reported 86 million total players, and only 2.4 million are active. So they give it a rating of like 3, which is not the worst on their list. Where it's interesting because old school RuneScape they have as number 2 with almost 2 million players active out of a total base of 26 million, which is pretty impressive. And just so we can kind of call out some of the top 10 here as a whole, just to kind of where things are at currently, they have number 3 as being Final Fantasy XIV and Realm Reborn. Number 4, they actually separate it and call World of Warcraft Classic, because that by itself has more people playing than everyone else on the list active. Destiny 2 is next, then RuneScape, then the Elder Scrolls Online, Black Desert, Star Citizen, and Guild Wars 2 are the top 10. With some other...
I'm surprised Guild Wars still there, actually.
It has almost 500,000 active players out of 12.8 total. It has a higher score percentage-wise than WoW does. And it's interesting because I looked at that list, and then the top ones, old school RuneScape and Final Fantasy XIV actually have an activity score of 8. because of the percentage of population, they're looking at probably, what is it, active players being 15, so like 30% of their player base is active, which is pretty darn good compared to the 10 or gosh, WoW is at, I don't know what that is, 2% or close to, a little more than like 3.5-4% of their player base. It's funny, as I look down, there's a couple that actually they have like 10s for activity level. Maple Story, which is if you're at least over 10% of your player base, truly 10%, I guess. It's 10. They give you a 10 score on this. So Maple Story has like 350 active out of 3.6 million, and Phantasy Star Online 2 has almost 200,000 out of 2 million accounts. And there's others in that go down the list. It's unfortunate too, because there's a couple on there that they still have their listed as like dead. So Marvel Heroes, 0 active out of the 1.2 million it had. And one that we had talked about real previously, kind of the idea of what were you looking for that maybe did or didn't happen. One for me that 0, because of course it died in the birthing stage, was EverQuest Next. Because it was the whole one that, remember, they were making destructible landscape and things like that, using what, I forget which engine it turned into, what they were using. If it was Lumberyard or something like that, is one of the initial pieces of it that got bought out and changed out and eventually just died on the vine like that. And then, but it's also cool because there's this list, like I said, it has Secret World on there at like 79th on their list. It's still active, 3,600 people playing and such. And so it's crazy, right? I've seen some of these like, holy cow, they're at the bottom of the list they track is what, Black Gold Online? I don't know that one, but it has a 10 rating because there's 94 average people playing active or whatever out of less than 1,000 accounts. So good on you guys, even the scrappy ones.
Yeah. Way to keep it alive.
Right? Oh man. So
in the chat we had some interesting conversation about how Ionis doesn't think there's going to be any more games akin to World of Warcraft anymore because it's now it's battle royales will sell, and I put forward I think it went MMOs to MOBAs to battle royales, but I don't think the previous ones died. Clearly they have.
Oh no,
right?
the MMOs are still active.
So much cash.
Well, the question kind of comes into what's being developed. Where is the world of MMOs going? Because if you just talk about overall popularity of game genres, I would agree. But I don't think that's the point of this conversation, right? Because there's always going to be FPS players. There's always going to be all the different times that are like top-down real-time strategy players and things like that, where an MMO lives in a various level. But I think the whole definition, right? A massively multiplayer online game, something that has more than the single instance of player base, where it's not just a round of Modern Warfare where you maybe, even in the grand battle royales, right? You maybe have 150 people playing together, which is a big map and is a big experience, but it also doesn't persist. And I would say that is an aspect of MMOs that is real, is that there's persistence in that gameplay. It's not just the one shot, right? Which is why one of the ones that I would almost put on that weird list, right, is kind of like PlanetSide 2 and PlanetSide, right? Because you have these massive 200 player battles that progress over, I don't know how long a match will take, where it ebbs and flows throughout the existence of that map. But is there really persistence? It's more just a shooter, right? So with that in mind, like, yes, there's always going to be those new ones, but when it comes to MMOs, I actually was more curious to bring up kind of that evolution that maybe got us to where we are today. That I agree. I don't think we're going to see another World of Warcraft. I was really disappointed we never saw World of Warcraft 2, right? That it's just been an evolution of World of Warcraft.
Why split the player base?
I do understand it's kind of that conversation that EverQuest had when they did EQ2 and eventually we're going to Next. And it comes back that EverQuest is the one that still sticks and people are still playing. But it's for me, I think I at least tie personally a lot to the subscription model or pay model of various games and how we've seen that evolution happening across the entire gamerscape, because there aren't very many subscription-based games anymore, unless I'm missing some. There's like a handful of holdouts when it comes to things like WoW.
A lot of the subscription-based stuff is optional. Like you can play any of Wargaming's games for free, and then sign up for the premium account, which gives you benefits over time. Like
Yep.
makes the leveling process or the teching up process significantly faster.
Agreed.
And by the time you get to tier 9 out of 10, you're gonna want the increased leveling speed. Well, so
But no, it's
right, when
it's
we
a
talk
smart
about
monetization market thing. It's very
Yeah,
smart what they're doing.
we talk about leveling processes, right? And some of them can be just downright nasty.
Oh yeah.
And if you think about it, if you're gonna sit down, let's just say in 3 weeks, I will have done most of what I need to do for the rest of the year, and I'm gonna have a bunch of time off. And let's say I wanted to sit down and grind a ship line from first tier to 10th tier, and just do the whole thing in one sitting, right?
Okay.
I could probably get from tier 1 to tier 5 in the first day. Like if all I did is play this ship and you play
Okay.
probably between say 3, so the minimum number of games you could play in an hour is 3, but realistically you're going to be playing somewhere between 4 and 8 games an hour.
Mhm.
You can get from level 1 to level 2 in one match. You can get from tier 2 to tier 3 in 1 or 2 matches. You can get from tier 3 to tier 4 in say 4 or 5 matches. Tier 4 to tier 5 in 10-ish matches. But then it really starts to, like, the costs increase. I don't want to say exponentially, but there's definitely some sort of multiplier for the amount of experience points you need to not only buy the tech upgrades inside a specific ship, but also to go from one tier to the next tier. So, for example, I just finished the tier 9 to tier 10 grind in the Japanese gunboat destroyers.
Okay.
Okay. 230,000 experience points. If you didn't buy, and now that is, you have to buy all of the ship hulls for the current tier, and then you can just grind XPs to level up to the next tier, and it's so tedious. Like I did it today, and no joke, I put on every conceivable experience point booster that I could possibly find and use them all at once.
Okay.
It's like, just get me out of the ship.
So what I'm hearing from you about the leveling process, it sounds very familiar or similar to what I've heard sometimes described as one of the negative aspects of a lot of free-to-play, even mobile games, stuff like that, right? That they give you some kind of hook of an experience, and then they make it where, now granted the difference being in World of War and all the World Series games, right? You're doing individual matches that are every time unique because you're playing against real people. But in a lot of those kind of games, a lot of the free-to-play games, they do a monetization scheme that eventually becomes painful to level. That they give you enough of free and they give you a hint or a tease at a monetization that makes it faster. Almost a lot of the good ones are the ones that do the psychological piece. They force you into it. They like through the tutorial even, they show you how to spend money. And they give you the free sample to do it. But
I've never really liked that model. That's always irritated me.
So that's the thing. It's what normally makes me run away from games, especially mobiles, is that once I realize that's a scheme. Now, granted, another piece of that is for me, and one of my lack of attachments to games is repetitive content, when what you're doing is the exact same thing you just did in 3 different ways, but it has a new skin on it and higher numbers involved. Meaning that it's a harder thing to do, or it takes longer to do, and you're at a higher level. And I think, honestly, the one that got me the most, that made me understand it, good, bad, or ugly, but made me really just pay attention to the mechanic and how it worked to make it so I'm more aware of it now, was Clicker Heroes. Like the old BS clicker games, right? That gets you to sit there and just, you do nothing, right? You click, and then eventually you do a little bit of where are you going to spend resources to make it so you have to click less? That is like legitimately, legitimately the whole process of the game. And there's no skill involved stuff, but what do? They feed you shiny colors and images to then change what you've just done to make it look different, but you're still doing the exact same thing. So because of that, for me at least, and it's kind of what even Kuro's bringing up about generalization of MMOs, any game for me that is really just a rehashing, canning, packaging of that mechanic of rinse repeat, you're doing the exact same thing and there's no variation of having to do this in a way that other real people change the experience, I get tired of very quickly. And so for me, personal thing, MMOs, I realize are not a go-to genre for me. And I've had a lot of struggle finding ones I enjoy. That's why it's a lot of fits and starts for a month, maybe 2, maybe 3. And a lot of that, even like the year or so with WoW, is mostly because people I know are playing that I want to play with.
The social element of games is largely what makes it, because I think games like MMOs don't require concentration. Like, I know that the reason I'm getting through so many books this year is because I'm picking games that I can listen to a book at the same time, and I enjoy that personally. But if I was told I needed to sit and play WoW and do nothing else, I'd be like, no thanks. I don't want to do that. That's not how I enjoy these games.
Yeah,
you know?
I can't think of a video game that I play now that I don't do something else while I'm playing it.
Agreed.
Gotcha. Yeah, because for me, those are the action games. Those are League of Legends, they're COD, things like that. Yeah.
Yep. But Outer Worlds, Warships, EU4, really any of the Paradox games, like I always have either Twitch or YouTube up kind of on the side. Like I designed the setup specifically for that. I have the ultra wide monitor to play games on, and I have the widescreen monitor like right next to it mounted.
Yep.
So all I have to do is turn my head like this and I can watch whatever.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Same thing. I've got gaming here and the screen just off to the side so I can like watch media and such. So I still do a
question for you guys, actually. Like, I know with if I'm playing a single player linear game that's like a good example being God of War, that's story based, then I will actually pay attention to it. But that's a rarity, those kind of games for me, because I like that's like a 20-hour game that I'll play like during the summer once, and then during that time I won't actually do anything else, listen to an audiobook or watch TV or anything. But every other game I tend to have something going on. Do you guys have any games that you do feel like you need to pay attention to? And do you think we're actually distracting from like the story and what we gain from a game? For example, World of Warcraft quests actually have lots of writing to read, right?
Sure. Yeah, the first time. And then it's like, okay, now I need 4 bare asses. It depends on what platform I'm playing.
Okay.
This is true.
If I'm playing on the console, like Ghost of Tsushima, like I laser focused on that because the game was so damn good.
Yeah.
And the story, I was engaged with the story for quite a lot of it. But when I'm gaming on my PC, I almost always am doing something else whilst I'm gaming on the PC.
Okay, so in a similar sense for me, it's depending on the game, because even if I'm sitting on console or on my television in the living room where I have less, it's not like just multiple screens and keyboard right up there in front of me. I find that this device becomes the second screen experience, and whether I'm like listening to a podcast or something else on my phone while playing. Granted, I do most of my gaming on the PC, but on the PC, it depends, of course. VR games, they're inclusive. I can't really do anything but VR. You're kind of stuck in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, right. But it's the kind of game. FPSs, stuff like that, things where I'm actively shooting and doing. A lot of it's because I'm listening. When you have to hear is someone's footsteps behind me so I can turn around and shoot them first. I'm very focused on that experience, but it's also a very contained experience. When I'm playing TFT in League of Legends, because it's the auto chess game, I am absolutely watching something else on this screen, doing something else, whatever it might be, YouTube videos, things like that, as I am kind of just clicking through. When I'm traveling in Star Citizen or something like that, I'll often bring something else up because there's time just being done. But a large portion of the games I'm playing are both hands on controller doing, and I'm trying to pay now, but there's a side note to that. and that's story, right? Not as many of the games am I playing am I doing story. I'm writing a review about a game I played on Switch the other day that I did play. It was only like an hour experience, but I was laser focused for that hour. And so there's something to be said for that, right? I just played it for that hour. It was great, puzzling, good time with that. So I just played it. But
so the reason I brought this up was because I wanted to ask the question: do you think MMOs in general have that as a sort of characteristic, where it is something you can passively play at least maybe 9% of the time?
No, I think the player base. I think players screwed it up. That's what I think. I think players screwed it up because here's the thing: when I played WoW originally, I cared about the story. And then when I got in a group and people had no effing patience for me because they had already done the quest or all they wanted to do is click and get the next bear butts, that they wouldn't wait for me. And so it turned into a thing where it was a negative playing experience to actually try to pay attention to the story in the game. And plus in WoW, you had to read. And in most MMOs, you kind of have to read. And so it's one of the things that turned me off from MMOs. I flipping hate them because they basically have zero story. Writers spend thousands of hours writing stories, but the player base took away the ability to enjoy them. It's almost like the players tell you, you have to have learned this elsewhere to play the game. How dare you enjoy it in game?
So Wayne,
I am bitter about that, like pissed off about that.
And I totally get where you're coming from. From the other side of what you're saying, I really, really don't want to read the quest of the guy on the shores of Silverpine Forest who needs, Hydra thoraxes.
Not all story is equal, right? Yeah.
So he can summon, a Godzilla light for the 87 billionth time, right? And then, in the days that I was doing that the first time, there was this giant queue. And the first person would turn in the quest, and the Hydra would pop out of the water, and everybody would jump on the Hydra. And then the next person would turn in the quest, and the Hydra would pop out of the water, and everybody jump on the Hydra. So I hear you. If you really wanted to be involved in the storyline and read all of this quest stuff and understand why the goblins in Stranglethorn Vale that's not even right. Have exiled one of their own, and you've got to go through and kill these foremen and do all this stuff while the goblins are like strip mining or deforesting this area. Like, I get it. I understand why you'd want to do that. I want to say that I did it the first time too. But then, 2 or 3 times, and and this is just a personal trait, like 2 or 3 times I have all that crap memorized.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, right?
Yeah, for me, it's not memorized, but I know the feeling of the story, and I wouldn't enjoy it again. And I think that can be said for... Okay, here's actually a good example of this. On my main character in WoW, what I'm trying to do, one of the main things I'm trying to do is sort of like, I want to finish WoW with that character. I want to one day get as many achievements as I can, I'll get all the mounts, and that's what I want to do with that guy. That's kind of his thing. He's an achievement whore, effectively. And I'm really enjoying playing him that way. In the last 2 expansions, for example, the previous one in Legion, you get your own class hall, and you're in charge of your entire class on Azeroth. Like, you're in charge of all the mages, you're in charge of all the demon hunters or whatever, and you're deemed to be like their champion, and it's great. And I think they actually make the story work that way. I was really impressed by that. In this expansion, similarly, you're no longer in charge of a class, but you're still deemed like the champion of Azeroth. You're still like you're the person who has saved it, and you like know the king, and you talk to him frequently, getting your quests from him because that's how important you are now. And I love that. It's enjoyable, but at the same time, I don't read any of the quests because I went back to and try to do this sort of finish all quests thing. I went back to Darkshore. Was it Darkshore? Let me actually check where it was.
That's the
Duskwood.
Second undead area?
Yeah, I meant to say Duskwood. That's why I got them mixed up.
Yeah, okay.
So I went to Duskwood, and it was my first time doing quests there because it's a demon hunter, so you originally used to start at level 55, so I didn't have to do those quests before. But I wanted to try and finish everything with him. So I went back there, and the first thing that happened when I walked into the tavern was the night watch guards lady said to me, "Oh, is that all they could send? Is you? Well, you'll have to do." And I thought, "Are you kidding?" I defeated Deathwing.
Do you know who I am?
I personally took on Arthas. You know, I'm the savior of Azeroth. I have like 20 titles I can choose from.
I am the Juggernaut.
I
right.
rode here on a demon. Like, I flew here on a dragon, man. Like, are you kidding? You're just some like level 20. Who and I got mad at that. Then I thought, you know, once upon a time, I was just a tiny little adventurer who was unknown. I've gotten so used to that's I think that's part of why I don't enjoy reading quests anymore. Is because, you know, when somebody tells me their woes, I'm like, yeah, well, I saved the world 6 times. I don't really care if your wife left you or has been killed by something and you want to get revenge or whatever. That's petty. That's minor. I do much more than that. I'm a large scale hero now, and whenever I do these quests that have nothing to do with saving the world, I'm like, all right, well, I have to do it just to achievement whore. But it's kind of out of my, you know, it's out of my scope and from my hero perspective now.
So
and that's kind of the sad thing.
It's the video game equivalent of professional athletes that end up going deep into the playoffs multiple years in a row. I've heard a couple of people talk about this, but if you make it to say the conference finals in the NBA or the NFL, even, right? You're playing all of these extra games. Like if you make the finals in the NBA, you could be playing an extra fourth of a season.
Okay.
Like 25% more games than anybody else. If you think about somebody like LeBron, who made it to, I think it was 8 consecutive finals, where he's playing an extra, say, 15 games on top of an 82 game season. So he's playing, just to make the numbers around, 100 games a year, where teams that don't make the playoffs are only playing 82. Like, that builds up over time. And you're just like, oh my God, I'm so exhausted. The way you were describing it, Ken, it's like you walk into this tavern, it's like they sent you, you'll have to do. It's like, wait a minute, do you know how many times I've saved the planet?
Yeah. Like, you should be on your knees kissing my feet right now, man.
You should be going, oh, they sent you.
Yeah.
Well,
solved. I'm going to go
right,
retire.
There's a big difference. There's a big difference between, oh, they sent you, and oh, they sent you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Exactly.
but that's one of those challenges to an MMO experience, right? These creators, admittedly, they're trying to cater to this mass number of people and try to give them all the hero's experience. You are all, thousands of you playing at this moment, the hero. And because of that, for me, there was always a breaking moment in that type of gameplay of, like Todd, you said earlier, queuing up to do the experience, the boss, the whatever, which is like, oh God. Or like you said, the text that's just built in there where I happen to want to come back and do this quest later to be completionist, or because I just skipped this zone in my first leveling attempt, and now coming through and I'm already this badass, to walk in and having someone be like you said, oh, who are you? Or da-da-da, and be like, what? And it's tough, right? To have an MMO who can be aware of each character's status and where they are and adjust for it. I believe there are some that do it to a degree or try. And I believe there's been some wonderful innovation of MMOs over the years, things like sharding and stuff like that to allow moments of customized experience. But I just know for me, those were all aspects that pulled me away from the games. But it does lend itself to the discussion of like, what's next? Because I have seen good experience when it comes to storytelling in games like Guild Wars 2, where Guild Wars 2, when you got to the story element, instead of you just standing there and reading a thing of text, it would switch you over to this narrative cinematic thing where you had both characters coming up that were speaking as like this whoop and the text coming along, and most of it voiced, at least in the main storyline stuff. And it really felt like you have a moment of like real story interaction that was awesome. And
I remember the first time they did, I'm sorry, Wayne, I cut you off. But I remember the first time that Blizzard did sort of that mid quest line cutscene
Okay.
And it was in Wrath of the Burger King, and you were about level 75, and you were doing things at the Dragon Tower.
Oh,
And the Alliance and the Horde had joined up, and they were going to the gate. And Arthas himself comes out of the gate.
oh, that's so good.
And the orcs are there, and they're fighting with the humans, and they're giving the Wrathgate, and they're giving as good as they're getting. And then all of a sudden, like Arthas finally is like, I have had enough of this, and he takes somebody's soul, like the orc leader's soul. And I'm sorry for those of you that are is it Saurfang?
I think it was Saurfang's son. That's how he got him, right?
Yeah, I guess. I honestly can't remember. And Arthas takes this orc leader's soul, and like everybody sort of stops dead, and then the Forsaken show up with their toxic, their super enhanced undead killing poison, right? That you if you did the undead side of the first questing area in
all the way from classic, from the original WoW storyline, you were working on the massive poison.
But this one was specifically though to kill the Lich King.
Mm-hmm.
And and I just remember that was like I remember it's like, okay, this is World of Warcraft. I've done all this stuff before. I'm gonna get some new abilities and stuff, but based on power creep, the new stuff is gonna be better than the old stuff, because if it's not, why would you ever choose it?
Yeah.
And so I was waiting for that sort of new thing, and that cutscene was like, oh, that's new. I kind of like, I kind of sit back and go, I kind of like that. That's not bad.
That was a tremendous experience, and it wasn't just. And also, one slight amendment to your story: the plague that they threw down didn't just kill the undead; it killed everybody.
Oh yeah,
so they started killing Alliance and Horde, and that's what was like so tremendous. It was like, holy crap!
Yeah,
the Forsaken are assholes.
No, I loved that. So
that was
and so that's the thing, right? There's examples of where even WoW, the old man on block, right, has learned ways to present story in game to add to it. And Iona responded there and said, see, you guys completely lost me here. For me, MMO is never about the written junk from quest givers. It's like something I'd read on the third or fourth alt when I have nothing else to do. Earlier, Lantis was like, I always let people do it. That's what the /dance command's for, to let them read. But there's, so that's an aside piece. That's just for me from a story element where I have always felt more attached to single player experiences because of story. MMOs give a different experience for me where I feel like it's a lost aspect where there's more depth to the game because of the story available. But like I said, I rarely was given an opportunity to really do it unless I played it alone, which takes away from them the multiplayer aspect of it. But in the MMO side, what a lot of them seem to be doing and always have had this like process that are a big goal or part of it is leveling, item acquisition, different types of questing or objectives to accomplish depending on the genre and stuff of MMO that all seem to be kind of persistent about what makes an MMO the thing it is. I know for me, one of the interesting things is we've gone from like WoW, which was very much, as I saw it described in a video earlier that I was watching about the various MMOs, a tab targeting type of MMO as one of the kind of mechanics, where a lot of the new modern things that are often based on Asian built MMO type structures are more action. Like I just go into a scene and play it more like a God of War game or something where it's just I attack into the group of enemies and do damage and such, more like an action RPG than a traditional, strategic MMO. And with those, what do you guys think about where we see the genre of MMO going? Do we think that we're ever going to get more of those like slow-paced tab-based ones where it's really about skill selection, optimization of like what items and abilities you're working with? Or are we going to see it more towards this more action RPG, active fighting style of gameplay in a massive landscape.
Todd, do you want to go first?
Sure, I can. I don't think we're ever going to see a technical group-based deliberate style of narrative-driven character development type of game.
No.
And there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one, if that game did exist, people would not leave World of Warcraft for it. Right? And we've seen that over and over and over again, right? Like every single one of the games that we mentioned in this show stood up to the plate, unless it predated WoW, stood up to the plate to say, I am going to take from WoW that which WoW has had. And none of them have done it.
No.
None of them have. So even if you could in this landscape, and I'll get to that a little bit in a sec, even if you could in this landscape make that game, you would never draw WoW's audience. It's not going to. Okay. There's another bigger problem in which your game has to be twitchable.
Interesting.
Right? And you have to be able to exploit the free marketing that comes from people trying to get famous playing your video game on the internet. And if you can't do that, or if your game is not dynamic enough to do that, then or you have to appeal to one of the big streamers, right? You have to appeal to a Ninja or a Co-Carnage or somebody like that, right? To get thousands or tens of thousands of eyes on your game within a reasonable amount of time after launch, like the first week after launch. And Co-Carnage, as a specific example, is enough of a variety streamer that if you were an MMO developer that made that kind of MMO and handed it off to him to play, he would probably play it. And there would be some amount of buzz generated from that. Right? But there are a bunch of people that play Destiny 2 that play Destiny 2 that I used to watch that I am not necessarily watching anymore.
Okay.
So I think the eye of the needle that you have to thread has become so tight that I don't know of a gaming company that could do it.
Okay.
Like Blizzard 15 years ago could do it. Maybe this new company that's making that's made up of all Blizzard alums.
Oh yeah.
That's making a new ARPG. Like if they turn their talents. What's that?
Morhaime et al. Yeah.
Yeah, Morhaime et al. I had a funny story about him. I'll tell you if we have time today. Maybe if they turned their talents to making an MMO, that they could do it, but I don't know that they will.
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think there's a huge, to make an MMO now, you have to. The problem is, unlike many games out there, MMOs need to make enough content that's repeatable. That's tough. To keep people interested in the same game, where they do the same thing again and again, you have to get it right, or at least most of it right the first time.
Yep.
Otherwise, you will fail the first gambit.
Yep. For sure.
But so the things that back to your original question, Wayne, the things that I think that are needed to bring in to bring people in to a new MMO, I think it needs to be modern in the sense that the graphics actually need to be up to date. I think it needs to be accessible at the same time. And that's difficult because I think people are going out and buying PCs. I don't know what the exact numbers are. And maybe I'm wrong here, but with the new consoles coming out and becoming more and more friendly in terms of they're slowly becoming more PC-like, right? I mean, we're seeing
They are baby
Xbox and
PCs,
PlayStations.
yes.
Yeah, they're small computers. They're coming out with the ability to, more online features, be able to stream games. More MMOs are coming out on these kind of consoles as well. And you can also I don't know, you can share videos from there. You can stream to Twitch from there. All that stuff is now becoming more easily accessible. And you know what? You buy it once, it lasts for a long time. So that's a very tempting thing. And the traditional MMO model doesn't really work for consoles because can you imagine WoW going to console? It wouldn't work. It's impossible. You'd have to have something with only 5 buttons, which again is something that doesn't appeal to me personally.
So it's interesting because you say that, right? You don't necessarily because consoles actually support mouse and keyboard for the most part. I played EverQuest on PlayStation 2. I played the original EverQuest on PlayStation 2 with a keyboard and mouse adapter because they were beta and bringing it out to it, and it actually worked really well. But what you're seeing too is on the list of the top 100 something games on MMO populations, when you look at things like Destiny 2 and Final Fantasy 14, those are console, right? Those are absolutely controller playable MMO experiences.
That's what I'm saying. They are more popular, more accessible nowadays. I'm just saying it doesn't appeal to me is all I'm saying.
Oh, okay, fair. Yeah, but what we're talking about, what modern specs or things of MMOs are out there.
Well, that's what I'm saying is I think that a traditional MMO that's just PC based like World of Warcraft, I don't know how viable that's going to be in the coming years because I think if they really want to bring in their audience, they're seeing the numbers that are coming in from people who are playing, for example, Fortnite, right? That's where you can get your big chunk of money. And if I was seeking investments right now for a new game, and if I was trying an MMO, I would certainly be aiming for it to be on console and to emulate the financial model of Fortnite. That's what I would that's the only way I could get funding, I think.
See, and that's a challenge, I think, like you're saying, because one of the big things is that change in pay structure. I don't know how likely anyone would be able to launch a subscription-based MMO today, like traditional subscription-based, because even WoW went for 20 levels free at some point, basically you can spend 2 hours and then you have to pay. Oh, well, wait, that's right. They're with the new expansion. Is that when they do the WoW level compression that's coming?
Oh, it's already come out. It's already out.
Oh, has it already? Okay.
Yep. So you can use 1 to 50, where the first 1 to 40 is any content you want. You select which expansion you want to play effectively, or classic. And then the last 10 levels are the newest expansion right now. Then tomorrow, 50 to 60 will be Shadowlands. Okay. So it's actually quite accessible. It makes it very, very enjoyable. If you're a new player, you have to play the latest expansion for 1 to 40 so that you are kind of up to date with the mechanics and the lore and so on. I think it's actually a very smart way of doing it, and I'm actually quite fond of this because right now it's a mess. If you try to understand the lore of Warcraft by going linearly through everything from 1 to what would be 130, I think it was dumb. I think the compression was needed at some point.
Should WoW do something like, since they have arguably the best cinematic team in existence when it comes to CGI, should they maybe sit down and create a story-based encompassing cinematic for each of those expansions or type of leveling experiences, such that if you chose to level TBC, but you wanted to kind of know what that story from original classic was?
Oh, I see.
You could just watch a video of
There's actually like a 12-hour video on YouTube or I think it's one single video now. That's got something like 20 million hits. It's like all the expansions with all the cinematics.
Well, there's one thing with the cinematics. The quests in between, of course. But that's what I'm wondering. It's like the other stuff to it, because I've watched a lot of WoW content of just people talking lore. There are series out there where you can go through easily 100 hours plus of listening to people tell you about the lore of various areas, specific characters, battles, things like that. It's silly. Right?
Because, there are the tons. Because World of Warcraft was an extension of the Warcraft
Universe, yeah.
Universe, right? Which goes way farther back than just, you know, where you show up in WoW Classic, you know, as a fresh-faced level 1 character or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of backstory. I actually quite like
it's got
that backstory.
It's actually got really good story. That's why I'm also that I didn't get to Twitch unless I do it on my own separate. Like, I give it to me in game.
I'd say WoW has a good base story. But a couple of the expansions are so bad that some of it's really confusing. Like Warlords of Draenor, it's just time travel and an alternate universe. Seriously, like that. You go back in the past and something different happened. That's just so confusing. Even the writers were confused, I think. And that's why it's basically just written out. 100%. Yeah, it's basically just gone from the. It's still canon technically, but it's been talked about since. Like, it doesn't exist in the game anymore because they realized it was so bad.
Eesh. So also, I mean, there are some new MMOs that we know are coming. I don't know if you guys have looked or followed any, or are there any right now that you're anticipating? I've heard of things like New World as an MMO that's coming up that a lot of people seem to be really excited for. That just got delayed to the beginning of next year for when it's supposed to launch, and this one's coming out from Amazon using their engine.
Oh, that's their one. I heard this, yeah.
Yep. Some other ones I've heard of, like VtWShowX. What was the other one on this list? I saw Ashes of Creation, I think, was one that I've heard a few times.
So that's one that I subscribed to 3-4 years ago. Like, I subscribed to the email list, and once a month they give me an update. And I gotta say, at first I was excited by the concept. It looked really pretty and interesting. It looks kind of dated already because they've been working on it for so long. I think it's because they got quite a small budget from the get-go, so their development time has been really, really massive. I think they were originally planning on releasing this year, but then COVID, so I think they're thinking next year now. But I don't care that much, you know. Like, and I think the problem with a lot of us veteran MMO players is this is how we look at the future of MMOs. We say, well, we'll see if it picks up a lot of track, but everybody's saying that. Right, I don't think anything actually gets the opportunity to have the initial burst of excitement, which you need. Yeah, you need that spark. You know,
Ken, my conditional is much more localized. If I could find 5 people or whatever the group size is that would dedicate time A to time B, 1 day a week, 2 days a week, something like that, right, to play all together. I would be down for hell. I would be down to play WoW Classic again, right? But to go through that experience for like the 5th time or 6th time by myself with no one to share it with no one to, like, you know, have awesome stories with. No, like I can have that experience by myself doing making silly videos about EU4 campaigns.
Gotcha.
I get where you're coming from, and I think for me the social aspect of WoW or any other MMO is less about actively socializing and more about passively socializing. Well, I really enjoyed WoW back in the day. I mean, yeah, I had the same experience as you did, where, you know, you have specific memories and cool things that happened. But the thing that really appeals to me now is I miss logging in and saying, "Hey guys," and having like 5 to 10 people that I know from raids and from events and from stuff over the years, where even if I'm doing solo content, I can kind of hang with them just in chat and see what they're up to. And maybe if one of them's stuck on something, I can go help out. But, you know, for the most part, it's just to chat and say, "Hey, I miss that. I miss that passive. Somebody will always be online. You know, there'll be somebody that I like that'll be there." That's what I miss about those games.
I say honestly, it's funny is because the modern version of that, I would say, is Discord. Is just having.
It's not the same game though, is it?
But I'm just saying having a Discord server, because I have a ton of people when we're playing who people just drop in. They're just like, "Hey guys," and just chat. For me, the most like the modern aspect I've had, because I understand what Todd you're saying, the reminiscing for me, it was any game, right? Just having a game that I know a bunch of our friends are all playing the same game. And I've had resurgence of that here and there, little limited ones. Call of Duty Warzone got a group of like 6-8 of us that kept running into it again together and play. The one I know I'm currently looking forward to, and we get spurts of it, is Star Citizen. Heaven forbid that ever comes out of alpha, and it is not vaporware in the long term. But because I've had moments where we got in and had probably like 10 of us on the same server together, and we were all doing mining together in like 2 or 3 multiple ships going on the same surface where we all landed together, and we were going through in moles that each handled like 4 people on a crew and had 2 of them running, and then one other person in their prospectors, so like 9 of us basically running a mining operation together, and doing like hauling missions in a Caterpillar where we were just pooling money to do simple buy low, sell high type of resource running. But because there were 6 or 8 of us on the one guy's massive ship, and we were all running around manning the various turrets and things like that.
That's pretty special.
And because there's travel in game, we had those moments of us just like, hey, hope we don't get jumped. But anyways, hey guys, and just chatting about life. And then if something did throw down, it became that action and moment where we were living in the virtual world together. That was a blast. And I still hope
that's cool.
I will get that in Star Citizen coming up, which I do have to give a quick plug before the show. Next weekend, for anyone who is checking out, Star Citizen's doing their expo right now where you can actually play for free. If you're on the VTW crew, for people that are in Star Citizen, update, get in there, play. On next Saturday, Asteroid Blues, our big, massive corp that we're a sister organization from, is hosting a meetup and get together for like 6 or 8 hours on Saturday next week, where there's going to be contests. They're going to be giving away a game package, including the brand new Mercury Star Runner, which is some multiple like $100-something package, really, really big one, as well as some other stuff. And that's people who run an organization are investing their own money to bring others into the world to enjoy. So a big event going on next Saturday. If you're part, check it out in the Discord channel for us or the Facebook, and you'll see links to it for the Asteroid Blues thing. And big shout out to Preacher, if he's still listening, who's hosting and setting that up. So I had to get that out there.
That was neat.
But I mean, that's for me, it's like a pseudo in between, because Star Citizen is a persistent universe, or is going to be eventually. And so it kind of is on that level. And it's one where that's part of my hope. It's what I had hoped from Galaxies, right? Back in the day, was being able to get a whole group of people, actually own property, build up an area, and all of us based from there. And I constantly feel like they get pieces, but never quite. As well as, and I don't have enough time to get into it, I was going to talk about some of the games that try to be MMOs, but really should never have been. The biggest one I throw out there is DDO, Dungeons and Dragons Online. Pissed me off.
Yeah.
Because it should have been Neverwinter Nights 2. Basically, it should have been a standalone multiplayer co-op game where the system is the DM. Because as I'm playing I'm playing D&D now with a group, and
Neverwinter Nights 2 is so good.
Yeah. And so there's a bunch of stuff that it's just like, I don't know. I think people are chasing the money, kind of like what Todd said, or what Shuked said about that Fortnite look and stuff, of how people are trying to sell games and look at them. Unfortunately, when it comes to any new thing we're seeing out, there is monetization's a big deal. It's a business, right? And I think that is one of those challenges for anything that is an MMO.
I've got a good question for you guys. What would make you go? What MMO would you jump into right now? Like say I don't know, Star Trek or something. Like, it doesn't have to be an existing franchise. Maybe you can just describe the type or what features you'd be looking for. But what would make you go back into an MMO right now? It's a tough question.
I realize for me, I do want a bit of action. It's my go-to. Where WoW was always passive to me and was a challenge for me because it was a little boring in the gameplay until the moments where you got into a big technical fight. So for me, action, and I don't know, a combination of the ability to play with a bunch of people, but as Todd has said, he is really good at crushing games. And so really good mechanics for allowing me to play with my friends no matter what level everyone's at. Even if it's not we're all doing the main battle together, but something where they take that into account such that I can still participate. I can still help, even if I'm not the guy doing the main thing. If I'm the guy doing side objectives that boost the encounter because I'm making sure that the gate stays open and finding little nothing mobs to keep them from closing the gate while the main group is tanking the dragon or something, right? Something where we can all play together so that even the people who are on 24/7 can have good experience with someone who's playing 5 hours a week. You know, that's a big thing for me.
Todd?
Wow. I think the universe would have to either be something totally unknown or something that I really loved. Like Star Wars, but not the Old Republic. Like I don't like the stories from the Old Republic time frame, if that makes sense. Like I don't think that particular part of Star Wars overall lore is that interesting. So I would be very interested in a Star Wars MMO with modern graphics and modern mechanics that was set in the Imperial time frame.
I agree with that. Yeah, that would be
So
awesome.
somewhere between the Battle of Yavin and Battle of Endor, right? And and again, I don't want to get too deep into the game design, but the idea would be it's a familiar enough universe. You know who all the characters are. Like you could meet Piet, you could meet Fossil, you could meet Nita, Captain Nita, you could meet General Right Camp, you could meet Mon Mothma, you could meet Jabba the Hutt, and Boba Fett, like plays a bounty hunter, IG-88, Bosk, so on and so on, so on and so forth, that kind of thing. That might be interesting. But something totally new, and I don't know what that would look like. Like I don't know, but definitely one of the prerequisites would have to be the ability to get enough people together to be able to fill a group.
Okay.
And not necessarily a raid, but like the small group content. Today we're gonna go do X, right? We're gonna go do Fiery Chasm. Today we're gonna go do Dire Maul East. Today we're gonna go do Maraudon, that kind of stuff. And as long as we could play consistently, I would be down.
That's cool. No, I think Star Wars is a good choice of a true MMO. I think there's an established universe. This really has got a huge player base. I think it could actually be. I don't think you've only chosen one that would be an idealism, but would also be a possibility. I could see that happening. One day.
Hey, Star Wars without Jedi is a wonderful universe to play in.
Yeah.
Because there are so many other cool aspects to the universe. It's actually why I'm more down.
I love the exploration of Grey Jedi.
Well, I'm more down. I don't even care about Jedi. Screw space magic. That's why I'm enjoying the Mandalorian series so much. It has less to do about the Force and less to do about Jedi than the world of Star Wars and other aspects of it. And what are Imperials doing outside of the big battle in the Skywalker story, right? It's so much more interesting. It's what the books gave us that were so much better than just the main movies. And so, I'm tailing on what Todd said. The opportunity to experience other areas and things in the world. Let me go to the droid planet where IG was made and stuff like that and see what that was like before they self-destructed.
I mean, I can, if we really want to do the design on this, I can see 3 parallel paths, right? There's a rebellion path, a bounty hunter path, which would be neutral, kind of, and an imperial path, right? And you would have sort of this rock, paper, scissors type of thing going on where maybe the Empire definitely doesn't like the Rebel Alliance, and the Rebel Alliance definitely doesn't like the Empire, but they both kind of sort of like, but kind of sort of don't like the bounty hunters.
Yeah, they deal with the smugglers and bounty hunters.
Yeah, like if you were going to play a bounty hunter, one of the things that you would have to manage would be the reputation, your reputation with both. So if you did too much stuff for the Rebel Alliance, like the Imperials would become more and more hostile to you. They did that in World of Warcraft, where there was it was to get into Moonglade, right?
Oh, yeah.
There were those fur blogs that there was one friendly fur blog.
Yes. Yeah, I remember.
Had to do a bunch of quests.
The reputation grind.
Be friendly, or at least neutral, so they wouldn't attack you on sight.
Yeah.
So that you could get into Moonglade. And I was thinking about something like that, but kind of in reverse. Like, if I did 100 jobs or quests or whatever for the Rebel Alliance, like suddenly, for the rogue elements of the Empire, I might be shoot on sight.
So you have to keep a balance or something. That could be interesting.
Yeah. If I'm playing a bounty hunter, if I'm not playing a bounty hunter, it doesn't matter. There's
been a lot of discussion in World of Warcraft about that because the Alliance and Horde sort of establishments seem to be failing because, the latest story elements have Tyrande being basically she's no longer like this peaceful night elf from up north who is just all about peace and magic and worshiping her goddess. She's now like the embodiment of vengeance, and she's like, I'm going to kill all the Horde. And she's now like anti-Anduin. She's against like the king of Stormwind because he keeps saying you need to chill. We want to have peace with the Horde, and she's like, no, I'm going to kill them all. So people have been sort of saying like maybe we'll eventually see like the breaking up of the factions. So it won't be Horde versus Alliance, and maybe then we could have like Night Elves having some combat with other parts of the Alliance who have their own issues, and we can see this dismantling of both the Horde and the Alliance. And it'd be really interesting to have these factions, and you can have that kind of system that you were talking about, Todd, where depending on who you ally with or what part of the storyline you're doing depends on who you can talk to, and that would be really fascinating to see. But the reality, I don't think that'll ever happen actually, but I think it's a cool concept.
No, I think it's really difficult. It's really difficult to manage in such a way that the worst player of your game would understand what's going on and be successful inside that system, right? Which is the goal.
Yeah.
So, again, just
yep.
Yeah, mostly I think mostly for me, I'm just gonna come back to this, and I don't mean to sound like I'm whining or complaining, so please don't take it that way. I just, if there were a way to organize 5 people that could show up at the same time on the same day, on the regular, like 40 plus weeks a year or whatever, to do group stuff together, like that's compelling. That's a compelling formula from which I would play almost anything.
So
I think
I would tail on that, Todd, in the sense because I think that's the modern challenge of anyone hanging out. When you see memes about being an adult and you're like, hey, I'd love to hang out with you. It's been too long. It's like, sure, well, let's just get together. Oh, wait, no, I'm busy doing this. Oh, no, I got to do this over here. Oh, I'm working those days.
Yeah.
So just actually. But for me to actually help enable that, similar to what WoW tried to do, but not the same way. The like looking for groups, looking for raid type stuff, but an ability to have a persistent group that works together, but content that allows you to not have to participate only if you were there at the beginning. Meaning, if I log in a half hour late, maybe I can show up and be a part of it still.
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Because one of the challenges, right? A lot of things are raids and quests. You have to like all run together and Logan in the classic sense.
So as Tasty Meat says, right, the more adulting you have to do, the less likely it is that you're going to be able to make that happen. And I hear you, but there are groups of adults all over the world that play Dungeons and Dragons together weekly.
There are, and I have a group who tries, and we haven't gamed consistently. Although we tend to show up every Thursday, we haven't actually been able to host games where in the past 2 months, we've had maybe 3 game sessions in 2 months, but we still show up and hang. And what I'm saying is if there was still a way for the group that did show up, minus the 1 or 2, to play effectively, and then if the other person shows up a half hour later, can jump in and continue playing with, that's what I'm saying. Something that kind of gives you still... Yes, we weren't trying to coordinate, but also I only have a half hour to play, but maybe I can still contribute in some way.
Yeah.
That's something I want
back
as
to
a core mechanic.
Back to the original questions before we do finish today. I was saying, what would make an MMO ideal for you to make you come back and actually play an MMO? Like it's a bit hard for me because I already do play MMO still, but I think the thing that would really sell to me, and you're probably going to cringe at my answer, is WoW 2. I would love to see a complete, like, WoW is such an old base engine. I would absolutely love to see it just to be restarted, right? And fine, keep the original WoW as is, let it run, let people play that if they want to. But WoW 2 would be not even, it'd be back like thousands of years before the first war, and time would progress as you go through the storyline. And then you could use the Bronze Dragonfly to go back and visit old stuff if you want to, kind of like the feature that you can now, depending on where you go. But this way you could go through and you can experience Medivh's Dark Portal firsthand without it just being like a timed instance. You could experience that entire campaign, you know? And I think it would give them an opportunity to do it all again. Like, what could they do better this time? You could have all the best features from WoW without any of the gumph that's been added on over time. So they can get rid of, for example, Warlords of Draenor.
Ken, you just need Blizzard to do the right thing and release Warcraft 4 that actually breaks the world that it is today and tells a compelling multi-staged RTS story that actually progresses us forward. And then you could release WoW 2 on the tail end of that as a whole new experience, be it through another portal to another land or something that creates the next full future expansion and continues the storyline of everything.
If
breaks.
only.
I'm just saying,
by the way, the Blizzard of 15 years ago could do that.
Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah,
sure.
Again.
But I think it's also the landscape. RTSs are nowhere near the power that they used to have.
No.
Because there are still good RTSs that come out, just not as many. But I will tell you, everybody has wanted Warcraft 4.
You say everybody our age group.
Well, would you buy Warcraft 4?
Yeah, of course.
Todd?
I don't know.
I would jump on it because I've gone through Warcraft 3 again and I'm like, damn, this was good. And Jones for it. Even from original through, yeah. Oh no, Reforged, no. F that. I'm not gonna pay again for that.
Well, that's my point. The last time they made an RTS, it was a complete fail. I do not see them ever doing that.
The last RTS they made was StarCraft 2, and it actually did fairly well. And they still have people playing it online competitively and stuff.
Yep.
But
no, that's a good point. RTSs are not my jam. So
that's fair.
I don't know that I would spend money on a Warcraft 4, but I understand the people who I understand the desire for the people who would.
Okay.
Like, I don't think I ever played the base campaign of Warcraft 3. I bought Warcraft 3 for DOTA.
Okay. Oh, see, I really enjoyed it. Anyhow, you're right. So here's the thing, right? We don't have a final answer on what it would take to make the brand new killer MMO. Obviously, nobody has in the past 16 years because WoW is still king. It is still the top dog by a landslide today in the MMO world. So I do have a question out to all of you who are watching us or checking this out after the fact. What would you need to make that next MMO? As Ken proposed in the question there, what genre would you be after? What are core mechanics you would have to say this is going to take all of my time? And yes, there are people out there. Lantis, I know you're doing it. I know that we have a few others that I don't think are on today. They're playing things like Black Desert, and others, My Brother Earth, are playing MMO still. What would pull you away from the things you've enjoyed today and jump you into another new experience? But what would it take? So I would love to hear from you. If you email us in at VtWShowX@gmail.com and let us know what are some of those core mechanics or aspects of the MMO genre that you would like to see to go forward. Would really love to hear that from you guys because we've had a bunch of conversation today about it. I think everyone in here has touched something in an MMO, and I want to know more. Right? What could be done out there?
One that says nothing. PSO forever.
Well, she says that, but I even mentioned PSO 2 is coming out with an update that's going to be a graphical update and hopefully help how groups and group mechanics work that I'm actually very curious about because it looks like it's going to take a game and do what WoW won't do and actually upgrade it significantly in the mechanics to make it a modern game. And I say that because PS2, even though it's new here in the US this year, it's been out for years. So anyhow, it's time for us to wrap things up. Note to Ionis, we're going to be doing some technical stuff real quick after the show, see if we can improve video quality here. But we'll jump into the chat after that, or maybe during. But with that, it's time for us to wrap things up. And so any last words from each of you?
No, that's everything from me, and I'm ready to do the spiel whenever. Todd, anything from you?
Ken, take us home.
All right, you have been listening to ShowX live on twitch.tv/VtWShowX. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to email us in, VtWShowX@gmail.com. You can support us on patreon.com/ShowX every month for a minimum of $1. Or if you don't like the idea of subscription services, trust me, we understand. We just did a whole show and skirting around that topic. You can also donate below by hitting the donate button somewhere down there. If you're on twitch.tv, you can see it there. You can also find us on YouTube. Search for Versus the World videos, and you can see both this show and our other show. Speaking of which, our other show is called Where My Pros At. It's every Wednesday at 6 p.m. EST, 11 p.m. GMT. And it's discussing novels and literature every single week. We recommend you read the book beforehand that we're going to be reviewing and discussing, but you don't absolutely have to if you don't mind spoilers. This week we're going to be reading 1984, as was kindly suggested by our community, by John and Beck. So thank you so much for the suggestion, and looking forward to seeing you guys there. We actually got a new channel as well. It's twitch.tv/where my pros at. So be sure to subscribe to that. We appreciate any support, and subscriptions are the first part of that. Other than that, you can check us out on reddit.com/r/showx and twitter.com/docdead, twitter.com/drkenreed. You can also check us out on Facebook, as just search for show space X. You should find us no problem. And you can also check out Octail's page, which is facebook.com/showx Octail for his own personal content. And I think that's everything. We've got so many. I need to just make a link tree for us. I did that for the other show. So
well, we have it in the Reddit.
It has everything in there.
Yeah, we have the link in the Reddit. That's our posted one we need to update. But yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll make a link tree after that. I'll make a link tree just now, actually. I'll do that. In like 10 minutes, check out Linktree, linktr.ee/showx. That's where it will be. But it's not been made yet, so don't steal that link. I'm doing it now. I'll beat anybody to it.
Careful with your challenges.
Thank you very much for the show. Thanks for hosting, Wade. Very much
appreciate it. All right, thank you guys. We have a happy Thanksgiving week for those here in the U.S. coming up, and we will catch you again next week. With that, we're out of here, and to everybody, a massive /salute.
Goodbye. See you next zombie. Good night.